saw the long white dress of love on a storefront mannequin. Big boat chugging back with a belly full of cars, all for something lacy. Some girl's gonna see that dress and crave that day like crazy. Little Indian kids on a bridge up in Canada, they can balance, they can climb like their fathers before them. They'll walk the girders of the Manhattan skyline. Shine your light on me, Miss Liberty, 'cause as soon as this ferry boat docks, I'm headed to the church to play bingo. Fleece me with a gambler's box. I can keep my cool at poker, but I'm a fool when love's at stake. 'Cause I can't conceal emotion while I'm feeling's always on my face. There's a gypsy down on Bleecker Street. I went in to see her as a kind of joke. She lit a candle for my love luck, and $18 went up in smoke.
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3733 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. We can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And as I continue to go on and traverse this trail, taking a path, the insecure way is the secure way on the Jake Feinberg Show, I continue to interact and learn and become enlightened from cats that have been improvising melodically for the last 4 to 5 decades. And I get a chance today to talk to a cat who has been stretching out ears, locking the groove, but also the ability to break up time and form. And he's done it with some of the most luminary musical figures in our country's history. He's a prodigious producer, and cat just keeps on going, keeps getting better with age, like a fine wine. Larry Klein, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
It's an honor to connect with you, man. I just kind of wanted you to talk about, I mean, we opened up, a while back, I had these soundboards of this 83 tour that you were on with Joni, Vinny Colaiuta, and I just wanted you to talk about, what it's like to be a bass player and to not just, quote unquote, lock the groove, but to really play the song. Especially with Joni. Joni's so melodic. There's so much jazz in her vocals. I just wanted you to talk about, how you play the song as a bass player.
Well, first of all, it was great to actually hear a bit of that. I haven't listened to that stuff for so long, and God, it sounds good.
Dude, it's burning. It's the most because you guys were masters of all trades, and you were playing, I don't know, folk rock, whatever you want to say, but it was like you were playing this stuff with jazz aesthetics. It was burning stuff. So anyway, keep going.
Yeah. Well, I think for me the center of the way that we approached her music was that at the center of that was the desire to find some fresh ground and do something new with the music. And she, as I'm sure you know, is and has always been a freshness freak. She doesn't want to just recreate things the way that they've been done. That for her is boring and honestly, I kind of have the same thing in my blood, and so that was something that we both met up aesthetically on, you know, and so when it came to approaching that music on tour, she really wanted to do something fresh. I mean, she had wanted to do something fresh and different from the time that I had met her. She had been, you know, kind of immersed in the jazz world, and so, you know, what she was searching for was a way to braid together the excitement of that sense of spontaneity and improvisation and where everybody is playing off of each other and hopefully everybody's playing off of the vocalist and the words and you know, and playing pictorially and also thinking about musical architecture and shape and contrast and all of these kind of things that you know, are a spontaneous kind of part of jazz improvisation at the highest level. And so she, you know, but at the same time, she was kind of craving having a bottom end that was more locked in and that grooved in a different way, you know, that grooved in a little more of a pop sense. And,
yeah, I dig.
And so, you know, so she wanted to kind of find this hybrid area where there was still that sense of adventure groove wise, but there was also still an anchor at the bottom of it that was always evolving. And so that was kind of, you know, the central kind of theme to what we were experimenting with in interpreting those great songs. You know.
Have you been able to connect with her at all since her medical situation? I know she's been out. I've done 3 interviews with Wavy Gravy, and I know that he linked up with her at a gig. And but you know, you guys were husband and wife. She is such to me. She is part of that totally eccentric, esoteric, beautiful folk rock scene. And I've interviewed Gordon Lightfoot and David Clayton Thomas, and Amos Garrett, all the, you know, and she's just she's a freshness freak, like you said. But if you could, in your own way, talk about what she means to you and also her legacy in the lexicon of music.
Well, I mean, first addressing your first question, I have seen her, and I see her. I'd say either once a month or once every other month. I mean, you know, of course, I have a new family, and so life is different now, and also she had this aneurysm, which she frankly was really lucky to survive, and she is in surprisingly good shape for someone who went through this kind of thing. I mean, I think medical people are astounded that she survived it, and she still is lucid and funny and has her same dark sense of humor that I love, and you know, but she does have some profound limitations. She can't walk on her own yet. I mean, I hope that changes and that she works her way into walking on her own. I don't know, you know, I'm not really that dialed into some of the intricacies of her medical situation, but you know, I go over to her place and bring some food from her favorite restaurants and sit and talk and it's great. As far as going from that to your second question, what her music and her sensibility has meant to me as a musician and as an artist and a creative person, I can't even begin to quantify that.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay. I mean, that is
it's huge. I mean, you know, she and I met when I was 25, or let's see, yes, 25. And she was 13 years older than me, and we met in the context of working on the record. I got called to play bass on this record, and over the course of a year, our relationship evolved from being a working one and a friendship to a romantic relationship, and eventually to being married. But from the beginning, and the thing that always was at the center of our relationship was that we had this kinetic and fantastic kind of ongoing discussion of the aesthetics of everything.
Wow.
And
that's beautiful.
And we could sit and talk for 5 hours about a book, that we both had read,
And you're parsing it, yeah.
And in the process of that, of course, on my end, it doesn't go. It goes without saying that she's a pretty brilliant person, in almost every respect, and so it was an education for me in many ways, and an education in action where we were kind of teaching each other and finding fresh ground within things that we knew, and arguing and debating and so whenever I'm asked, like, oh, so what did you derive from the relationship in a sense of what you make and how you think about music and how you think about the arts, it's a universe in itself. What I learned from her, and so and what I learned from her and what I learned inside myself just from the interaction and from the musical sort of give and take of things, she really stimulated me to think in all different ways about how music is constructed and how to think about a track and how to think about a song and what makes a great song and all these things. So it's a book.
Well, what a beautiful answer to that. We're talking to Larry Klein here live on the Jake Feinberg Show on Power Talk. Just put a button on this, that in that time of making the album with her and then seeing this on the stage, it's fascinating. It was really this era, beginning this era of Guitar Hero, glam rock. There was this pulsating, the drum machine had fully infected music, disco had infected music, and I wonder sometimes about how much you were conscious in that setting and how much you guys talked about dynamics, keeping things to a very quiet. Even though Kali Yuta was burning back there, you were cooking the groove, but this idea of, I'm 39. My generation, younger generations, we get up on the bandstand. It's like all of a sudden you're at 10, volume 10 right away, and you stay there the whole time, and you blow people out the door, and there's no nuance and there's no dynamics. So this is a larger question, is because you were an acoustic. This is what I want. It's kind of you can riff on this however you want, but at that time, that's when the music, it started to sound like almost machine gun fire. Some of the bass drums, and not necessarily that tour. And I wonder, you guys seem to be like holding back the hands of time a little bit with some of the melodics and also the dynamics. I just wanted you to talk a little bit about how you modulated that in the era of the Guitar Hero.
Well, what it came down to was the idea, and this is something, that I had thought about certainly before this, but what she taught me is that when you're if you're playing in a situation where you're playing a song that has words and with a singer, the job of the musicians is to create an underscore for the poetry, and that's an idea that is rare to find in a lot of types of music these days, and certainly was at that time, as you say, with the advent of machines and sequencers and things changing in the technology of how you make records. But this idea that the words are king, the poetry is what it's all about, and the music that goes with that poetry doesn't have to be blandly subservient, but it has to help illustrate and underscore what's going on in the poetry. And so, of course, with her songs, the fact that they are so rich and in some cases profuse and in some cases they contain a lot of vocabulary that's not usually used in songwriting. All these things.
Totally, dude.
You have to create contrast and in everything, in dynamics and in contrast, in the density of a groove, in the way that you approach the architecture of a track. You have to create something that in the same way that in a great film, you don't necessarily notice every detail of a good score, but in fact, a lot of times when you don't notice it, that's when it's functioning in the way that
exactly
it is supposed to function.
Exactly.
And so you find these ways of creating textures and different flow to things that underscore the words in a way that makes them more vivid and more present, as opposed to just kind of blowing along with words. And that's a very different idea for the most part than most jazz players approach music with. And I kind of came into jazz when in a more omnivorous kind of way, because I grew up, when I was in high school, say, I was obsessed with jazz, but I was also obsessed with pop music and rock and all sorts of different music, classical music. I was studying composition, and so I kind of came at it in a different way, and I was already very concerned with how, what makes a great song lyrically, and how do you write a great pop song, and so and then you had certain figures in the jazz scene, like Dexter Gordon, for example, would require all of his sidemen to know all the lyrics to all of the standards, that they played.
Wow.
And but that was like the exception to the rule. There were certain guys who thought that way and knew the importance of knowing what you're playing and what you're illustrating in a song. But for the most part, even the greatest, like someone like Herbie Hancock, when we came to work together on a record of Joni's music, I mean, he said, I've never listened to words. And so what we tried to do with that record was with this completely, with this incredible group of jazz players and these great songs, create yet another language, like that emanated from the players involved interpreting these songs of hers, but with a language that came from this concept of illustrating the words, you know. And Wayne Shorter, for example, he naturally came from that kind of perspective. But Herbie hadn't before, so a lot of the pre-production for that record was me sitting with him and explaining what these songs meant and what the words meant and why, you know, how we should approach creating something texturally that would make sense and click in a way where people would hear the song in a new way. So it's you know, that's a big idea too. You know, like it's one of those things that, you know, you go. I just worked on a track just the other day, where someone came in to play a solo on something, and he just started blowing. You know, and I thought, wow, that is such a strange thing. You know, like, and I had to kind of stop him and say, what about the idea of developing a motif and you know, you know, sort of.
Well, I mean, this is a lot of people, in terms of crafting and building a song, it seems, for whatever reason, I wanted to ask you specifically about, I mean, what's fascinating in the Google, you type in to Larry Klein All Music, and it's like you begin on the bandstand, at least in the internet world, you know, with Freddie in the late 70s. But I want to, this part of my show is creating new history and promoting the ideals of how real music is made. And I kind of wanted to know, when you were playing upright, ultimately, if you played in unamplified settings, because I've interviewed over 1,000 cats, and I mean, so many of them came up and the music was not it was not loud. I mean, there would be a situation where, like, I remember Mike Mainieri, he said to me, he's like, you know, I played 3 nights in a row where Buddy Rich didn't touch the bass drum. He played time on the cymbals. And I wanted you to talk, especially when you're playing upright, earlier than Freddie, were you playing Dante's? Where were you? Were you playing with beat? Were you playing with like you talked about Joni saying that the words, the poetry is essential, and then the soundscapes and the shapes occur. But what were you doing? Let's fill in the gap. You were a burgeoning cat in the early mid-'70s. I just wanted you to fill in that gap for me.
Well, when I was in middle school and high school, I started going. Somehow, my mom found this place actually, and it was called the USC Community Schools, and it was on the grounds of USC, and it became what is now in LA called the Colburn School. And the Colburn School is this incredible place that's adjacent to Disney Hall downtown, and so when I was going there, most of the kids who were going there were you know, training in one sense or another to be classical musicians, but and to some degree I was still, you know, I was playing in community orchestras and doing that kind of stuff on double bass, but also at the same time I was playing in little rock bands and playing, you know, all sorts of stuff. That's what I was referring to when I said I'm an omnivore. You know, I just started out. I did.
Were you playing upright with rock groups, or was it electric?
No, that was electric.
Yeah.
But then upright wise, what I was leaning towards here, or sort of leading to, is that I met the one other jazz guy at that school in my class. As a matter of fact, was a guy named Billy Childs.
Oh my
and so
God.
Billy,
filth.
Yeah, so Billy is probably my oldest friend, you know, in some senses, in that we just bonded like crazy because, you know, we were both studying classical music and studying composition and theory and all this stuff, you know, in a traditional sense at this place while we were finishing high school, but also we were obsessed with jazz, both of us. So we would, like get together and we played, I don't know how many, probably thousands of hours just in his bedroom or my bedroom duo, playing through stuff and all, we were both Bill Evans fanatics. We were, and so, and in those, we did a lot of trio playing. We played in all sorts of different settings. And then during that same period of time, there was a place in L.A. called the Comeback Inn, INN, and
wow.
and it was on Abbot Kinney in Venice, and that place was a great little joint because you played for the hat, and they had music every night, and I played there countless nights with Billy, just experimenting, doing things, and then I played with other bands where we were. It was all kinds of great players. Chester Thompson was part of that scene. The drummer Chester Thompson.
Oh my God! I thought it was just funny. I thought you were talking about the B3 player, but Chester was the drummer. You're talking about, wow, dude,
who, by the way, was a great jazz player.
Oh,
and,
God, I haven't talked to that cat yet. Yeah, he's bad man. Yeah.
He's great, and then Patrice Rushen was part of that scene.
Yeah.
And countless, a lot of other great players, and so that was a place where we really had. I was starting to do some gigs with different bands at Dante's, as you mentioned, or the Baked Potato, and these kind of clubs and stuff. But at the Comeback Inn, we just had this free blank palette, blank canvas that we could just expect. We could go in there and play the weirdest stuff.
They
were happy about it.
Do you have tapes of that? I need to hear this stuff. This is.
Yeah. I wish I did. One of the manifestations of it was a band that, for a brief time, Billy and I had with Diane Reeves, believe it or not. So Diane, Billy, and I go back together to that time.
Wow.
And
wow.
you know what? He probably has some tapes of that stuff that we did together. And I don't know. I'd have to look through my stuff and. It would be amazing to have some of that,
Well, it was these like live. It was just so invigorating. You. What year were you born?
56.
Okay, so 50. So I mean, you came after Larry Gale's Coffee House, and sort of this. This.
Oh, I used to go see Larry Gale's play. I loved his playing.
See, I mean, this is. I just, I had an opportunity yesterday. I finally connected with my man, João Donato, okay, the Mercurial Brazilian, okay.
Oh, my God,
yeah.
really?
Oh, I got to send you. You're going to love these interviews because they're all, they're all in this form. I mean, it was very hard to understand him sometimes, but he was so classic. He came to the States with this guy, Willie Finez, or he's a trio guy in Lake Tahoe, and it was a 4-week engagement, and he went to go audition for Rene Block, right, his band, and and Block was like, "Hey, man, you can't play Latin music. You don't know how to play Latin music." And so João was like, "Oh, okay, no problem." So that night, he winds up at maybe who knows where it was a nightclub, and he went to go see Cal Jader's band, and at the time, it was the band with Mongo and Willie Bobo, and so
you're getting to another. That's leading to another part of my.
Yeah, no, this is total free, total stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
So we're weaving in and out, because the Billy Childs thing led me to another thing, but I'll get to that later. But the thing is that Mongo's like so first of all, they said, "You want to come up and play?" He played with them, and then so after Block basically told him he doesn't know how to play Latin music, Mongo said, "Listen, I'm going off on my own. Please join my band." And the rest is history. I mean, they went to New York and they did all this stuff. But I asked him, I said, what does jazz mean to you, João? And he said, and then you can just riff on this. He said, he goes, "Jake, again, this is a guy coming from Brazil, grew up in the Amazon, grew up in the dense Amazon." And he said, jazz is a way of life, Jake. It's about how you feel and how you want to be understood. And then he goes on to talk about Horace Silver and his rhythmic concepts. But I wanted you to talk about that, especially early on, because it's changed. In my mind, jazz, which is a word I don't really like very much, it's turned into a very boutique kind of inside joke, complex thing for jazz musicians, when in fact, as Art Blakey said, it's the job of a musician to wash away the dust of everyday life for the peeps that come in to check you out. And I just wanted you to talk about if you were able to feel and touch and it sounds like you were, the jazz life, if you could really talk about what you believe the jazz life really is about.
Oh, that's a great question. Well, first of all, I have to say that my really first gig in a sort of a professional jazz sense or professional sense was Bobo's. So that was in fact when I got the gig with Freddie, I was playing already with Willie, and Willie kind of feigned being offended and pissed off. But he was he understood that I needed to go.
I'm sorry, you cut out there. You said Willie Bobo. Was that Willie Bobo your first gig?
Willie Bobo. Yeah,
oh, that is so
right,
unbelievably. That dude was a total. He was a schemer and a line stepper, but the dude was he was a crazy dude.
Oh my God! He these guys, Willie and Freddie were like my ne'er do well stepfathers, really, because
right.
I was a kid from the San Gabriel Valley, and they really taught me the ropes of all sorts of things. And with Willie, I really learned how to play Latin music from him because, he was a born teacher, and that was how he approached leading a band was getting guys who he felt had promise and were good players, and then developing them. And so through endless kind of crazy stuff on the bandstand and in rehearsals, I learned how to play that music, and then really kind of the same thing with Freddie over the course of I guess about 5 years that I played with him, and God, it's such a lot of what these guys taught and what players were taught when they played in these great bands with these kind of musicians was metaphor, and a lot of it was kind of unspeakable in a certain sense. And it's very difficult to articulate in words. I learned so much from both of those guys.
This is so important because we are living through such an academic time in music. Can you give an example of I love to hear, because you're right. It's all, I forget the word you just used. It was metaphors. It was, don't listen to what you're hearing. Don't, any note can be the one. All this really incredible, just insanely cool stuff could you give an example of a teachable moment with Willie or Freddie that you remember?
Oh God, yeah. Okay, so the first thing one of the first things, right towards the beginning of when I started on the first tour that I did with Freddie, we were touring back east, and I was thrust into this whole new milieu, and that gig really entailed playing everything that you knew how to play every night. It really was a stretching kind of gig, like you had so much latitude, like to create and to texturally develop things and go in different. He was really great about that. He wanted to be kicked in the ass and taken different places, and in that, I know he his role model was Miles, and he had that same kind of idea that your band hopefully kind of doesn't just kind of play something that's safe. That he wants it to break through walls and stuff.
Right,
so,
you got to go fishing.
So,
Yeah.
Anyhow, so my first sort of misconception was that I was playing too much, which is of course textbook, because you get out in this world and you're anxious to show everybody that you belong there, so you want to you want to play a lot, and show everybody with every solo that you're great. And so a couple of times he kind of alluded to that, in a very vague way, either on the bandstand or just after we played or something like that. And then we were in Philadelphia on this tour, and we were playing a place that used to be there called the Bijou Theater, and after the gig, I go into the dressing room, and it's completely packed with all these kind of, envision like, Curtis Mayfield, Superfly era kind of
right.
characters.
Total 70s
Everybody
vibe.
had a white hat and shades, and there was all kinds of illicit stuff going on in there, and so I sat down and kind of wanted to sort of assimilate into what was going on, and so at a certain point, the conversation ebbed for a moment, and I thought, wow, I got to say something. I better say something. And so I think I said something to the effect of, "Boy, isn't it smoky in here?" And the whole room, it was like if you were making a film of it, the whole room turned around and looked at me, kind of like, who the hell is this guy, man? like to say something that stupid.
Right.
And then they stopped the beat, and then they started talking again. And then so I thought, oh man, I just don't have a clue as to how to mesh with these guys and what's going on here. And then about 2 minutes later, or not even that, Freddie leaned over towards me. He was sitting next to me, and he kind of looked me in the eye, and he held out his hand, and like he was holding something with his knuckles up, and like to give me, so I put out my hand to take what he had, and he looked me in the eye, and he basically gave me a handful of garbage, which was like a bottle cap and a cigarette wrapper and some other junk, and just said space, and I kind of sat there and thought about that for a second, and I realized, don't have something to say, don't say anything. And if you don't have something to play, if you don't, play what you need to play. Don't try to think of something to play to show something, to show your ability, to demonstrate something. Play what the music needs, And that was one of those real big moments for me. Something as small as that, and he knew exactly what he was. He knew. Exactly
was he referring in the moment to the social context, or was it also related to where you were?
No.
Was he also talking about?
No, it was a metaphor. It was a metaphor for the other stuff.
That's that's an avatar quality right there. That's really very intense.
Well, those guys have that. Miles certainly had that kind of
Zen
world wisdom, and Freddie did too. At his best, he was just an incredible teacher, and of course a genius musician, but an incredible, kind teacher. And then of course at his worst, he could be a demon. But yeah, he would teach through metaphor all the time like that.
Well, I want to read. I want to read.
Very
Yeah, no, I want to.
way.
I want to. This is. I'm really happy to talk to you because for so many reasons, and your answers are so legitimate and so deep that we've been cooking already for quite a while here.
Yeah.
This is the thing. This is from your old comrade. I've had a few opportunities to actually. I met him in person, and he played a concert that I promoted. Carl Burnett, and he was with Freddie.
Oh yeah.
Freddie, he was with Freddie a few years prior to you joining the band. But he said that
That's right.
This is a quote from him. He said, "When I was with Freddie Hubbard, sometimes he was totally insane. I remember one night we were playing a gig in Santa Barbara opposite the Crusaders. Something happened.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what. Mm-hmm. Between the Crusaders' performance and us coming on, Freddie got a chair and went and sat at the front of the stage and cussed out the audience for a half hour. We never played. He was like a madman.
Yeah, right.
When I was with Freddie, sometimes he was, and he said, we never played. So the people stayed. We thought they were going to charge the stage at any minute. But that became the show. Finally, the Crusaders came out and said to the audience, "Why are you guys letting him do this to you?" The curtain closed, and we never played. And then the final thing he said, he goes, "One thing about Freddie, though, when he was on, he was so on. He had a tendency to make up for everything that might have taken place beforehand." But the bottom line is that it's that edge, it's that urgency, it's that. And I've heard stuff, so he was a combustible figure. But I wonder sometimes if that sort of unpredictability lent itself to the ability for the music to ultimately transcend the way you guys, in all those great videos, and we're going to listen to one in a minute. But I wonder about that unpredictability and how that lent itself to the music, especially in a live context.
Well, I think that my interpretation, because of course I lived through exactly what Carl described there numerous times, and interestingly, it was a very similar script each time it happened.
Mm-hmm.
It was he and what happened. My take on what happened was that he just had, if given the right combination of chemicals, he would just click into another mode, and it triggered some kind of really terrible, painful stuff. I think the racism and damage that he had growing up in Indianapolis, and just some stuff that was just very dark, and so what I think that certainly an element of what in his personality contributed to or fed into those moments when he would go over the edge. I think that part of that, of course, was part of his the fire in his playing and in his personality and in his genius that drove him to explore and try different things and not be complacent to just play one kind of to just stay playing traditional bop kind of stuff. And he was searching around, and so he had that kind of fire within him. Now, when as I understand it, like from Herbie Hancock and other people who were there when he first came to New York, he was straight as an arrow. He didn't drink, he didn't do anything, and he was and he was ridiculous. He was amazing musically, and so I think that whatever that is, that fire, that kind of restlessness, that when that came into contact with the right combination of cognac, cocaine, and God knows what else,
Well, he was just. Anyway, I want to play you a piece of music here. And then we'll come back and break it down, okay?
Okay.
I queued it up at the beginning of that tune. That was from 1978 from Umbria, Italia. Your
yeah.
And you're, I mean, actually, we don't have a stereo unit here to run through. So your bass is pulsating. The beginning of that tune is you and Childs in full experimentation mode, like burning for like 3 minutes, dude. And I you know, this is really important, man, because I when I go see live music, when I have the opportunity to, I see younger cats and they're very much fixated on where's the one, you know, especially the rhythm section.
Mm-hmm.
They always want to know where the one is. Okay. And I've talked to, you know, everybody from country folk guys to like, you know, the blackest of jazzers. And they were like, I mean, cats like James Jamerson were like getting frustrated because they went in LA, you know, they'd be at a session and someone's like, well, where's the one? Where's the one? And he'd be like, any note can be the one. And I wanted you to talk about your concept of that idea of when you're in a group setting, in a live setting, and you're playing improvisational music and you leave the structure of the tune, how any note can be the one, and that feeling of when everybody comes back in at the same time. To me, there's only 2 letters that separate magic and music, and that's one of them. And this time of being obsessed about where the one is, sometimes you got to throw that out the window. But I would love to get your take on your concept of the one.
Well, you know, I think, I mean, what I get from, of course, that subject. I mean, you can take that subject in so many places and interpret it so many different ways. I mean, I know that James Brown was all about that too. That, you know, that was his mantra, was, you know, always stay on the one, you know, or, you know, he had a sort of concept about the architecture of groove and such, you know. But my where I would go with it, I guess, you know, in this conversation would be that it's about having the ability to set aside, to so be conscious of where the one is that you don't even have, that you can make it absolute subtext where you know, where it's understood but not stated, and where the parallel kind of the parallel stream is composed of different ways of creating tension and then release, you know,
right.
And I think that, you know, when you talk about the people who really broke fresh ground with that kind of thing, like Tony Williams and Herbie and Ron and those kind of musicians. It was about that, that they had such an innate kind of grasp of holding on to where the one is, that the one became kind of like a jam metaphor or something, like, because it's always there, but it's always referred to through a tangential kind of set of mirrors or something, And
I love it. I love this.
I mean,
I love it. Yeah.
I always think about, like, for me, some of the best jazz that I've ever heard is on that set of recordings from Live at the Plug Nickel of Miles with Herbie and Ron and Wayne.
Yeah, Randy Brecker said the mid everybody, Tommy Coster from Santana, they all point to that. Was that like 65 roughly? You say is that the right?
That sounds about right. And
yeah,
and when you listen to that, it's like whenever I describe that music that they made on that, it's like the James Joyce version of jazz.
I dig, man.
Like,
I dig.
It's just like everything is metaphor, and very little is actually stated. It's like all you get is like a little sort of impressionistic, dash of a brush, and that represents the ocean, and when I asked Herbie about that album and what created that situation, and he said that they had been playing and really pushing the envelope, and they felt that when that gig came up, first of all, none of them knew that Miles was going to record it, and so they had felt collectively like they had kind of fallen into doing a routine kind of, like with the songs they were playing, like they discovered sort of arrangement, little ways of approaching things, and they felt like everything's still and kind of relying on devices and whatnot.
Yeah, right.
And so Tony, who I guess was kind of the spark plug ringleader within the band, said, "Okay, come on, let's take an oath." On the way over to the gig, he said to them all, "Let's take a blood oath. We're not going to do our same old crap. Okay, we're gonna go to fresh ground completely on this gig." And they all kind of took an oath, And then they got to the gig and they discovered, oh, they're recording it, and they all kind of said to each other, "We still got to do it," And so they didn't know, they really, between them, they didn't know whether Miles would be pissed off or whether, how he would react to them playing that way on a recording situation. But Miles dug it, of course, he loved it. So they, that was,
that's like, I've never heard the oath thing. That is just,
Yeah, I didn't know that either until he told me, and I've always, through the years, I've lived with that record, the initial version, and then the box set that had all the nights, and I've listened to that thing to death, and it's spectacular. It's like, to me that you want to give someone a textbook of how to play jazz in a adventurous, exciting, non-scripted way, and there it is,
Well, so Larry, I could talk to you for literally 3 hours. I'm having. I wanted to ask you. I'm working on a documentary on Stan Getz, and I'm going to be out. Ironically enough, I'm going to see my boss who lives in Santa Monica. on Monday, and I was wondering if you're available. We can talk about it, but either Monday afternoon or Tuesday morning before I head back to Tucson, I'd love to pick up and do part 2 with you if you have any time.
Well, I would love to. It might be tough. Monday, I'm in the studio starting a record, and Tuesday, the only way that I could do it would be really early in the morning.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean, count me in. I'll do what I really want to do is ultimately a Facebook Live interview with you. So even if we had to get some coffee and and do it in your studio, I'll meet you anywhere at any time. I just figure you're out there anyway. I'm going to be out there. Let's stay in touch because I'll get up at any point.
Okay.
I'm crashing with Dr. Gleason and Dr. Patrick Gleason. So we should get together, man. I would love to meet you in person.
I would love to. Monday and Tuesday are tough though. But
let me ask you a question. Well, tomorrow's a little bit tough for me. All right, so whatever. We'll talk about it. It would be really cool if we could swing it, but either way, we'll this is set 1, and I had a ball, man. Thank you so much.
Oh, me too. It was just a joy talking to you. Smart questions and man, this kind of stuff I think is especially for young players coming up, it's invaluable. So
well, it's really honestly, it's about promoting love. I mean, it's all about love at the end of the day. Yeah. So that's it. Man.
Yeah.
All right, man. Much love to you, Larry.
Okay.
Later on.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Larry Klein, legendary bass player, amazing human being, and we got more to get to with him. We'll be back with Sikru Adijobu after this.